Hey, Art Barrett here for Murphy and Barrett. And, kudos to my good friend, Dr. Kevin Murphy. I happen to be standing on the banks of the Deschutes River in Oregon, and it's going to get hot. I want to start us off this morning as we continue on our series talking about our 5 capitals, even really asking what is it that we have that we've been invested with, and how do we invest that? With a question: when is enough enough? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever heard somebody say that? You may have said that in disgust, looking at someone and said, when is enough enough? I want to ask you this morning one step further, not just when is enough enough, but when you have more than enough. When have you done the right and the wrong thing, the good thing, the helpful thing, or the selfish thing with your more than enough? We are in a series, as I said, about our 5 capitals. And today, I want to read a scripture. I want to start with a scripture in Matthew 24. It asked, who then is the faithful and sensible servant who the master put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? So that's the question. Who is the faithful and sensible slave, servant, steward, who the master has put in charge of his household to give them, in order to give them, food at their proper time? The context of this story is in the middle of Jesus talking about end times. Talking about when Jesus will return. And most of the focus when people go to this is all about the indications of the sudden and unexpected appearance of Jesus. But really, that's the climax of the story. The outcome of the story is based not on that moment when the master returns, but what the steward, what the servant, what you and I, what have we done up to that point with what we've been invested with? You see, everything you have ultimately belongs to the master. Everything's God's. What do you have that you didn't receive? Well, you think, well, I worked hard for this. Well, certainly you did. And who gave you the health so that you could work? Well, I earned this because I knew so-and-so. Well, who gave you the relational capital so that you could have that job or keep that job or flourish in that job? Do you understand what I'm saying? So we, every one of us, are stewards of our own household, but every one of our households belong to the household of heaven. Are you tracking with me? So what's happening is we've all been invested. We've all been given a household. We've all been given treasure. And what we do with that treasure between now and when the master comes to say, what did you do, is what everything depends on. So when I look at this question, say, who is the faithful and sensible or wise servant that the master has put in charge of his whole household? I first go, well, who would qualify? Who would qualify? Well, here's the bottom line. You and I all qualify. We're all in. God, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter how much or how little you have, what you have is an investment from God in you for you to invest, for you to live with. And often the big question is, am I going to use everything I have to get more and more for me to, in effect, build my own kingdom? Or am I going to use it to advance the greater kingdom, the greater household? So this week, and I'll pop up a couple of pictures here, we've got in July, we have billionaires going to space. And one of the criticisms I saw of that was not that they were going to space, as much as they're going to space, spending billions of dollars in order to take celebrities for a joyride into the sky, when perhaps we could be using the same finances to end world hunger or other things like that. So it's not that it's a problem that somebody's going to space, but when is enough enough? And when you have more than enough, do you just go on joyrides for yourself? There's something in this passage about giving out the food, giving out what's been entrusted to you at the proper time. Our main text that everything is spinning off of is the treasure that's been entrusted to us, given to us, that we find in Matthew 13:52, where he says that every one of us are stewards, masters of our own household, and we have been given both treasure old and new. Some you've had forever. Some has to do with things you learned long time ago or that were given to you, entrusted to you, invested in you, whatever that might be. And some is brand new. Some could be 20 minutes old. Here's a treasure for me. Look at this beauty. This is brand new for me. This is new treasure. The revelations, the treasures that are here are mine, and I'm sharing them with you. Do you get that? I am sharing the treasure that's been given with me to you, with you right now. In Matthew 13, the point of the parable is to invite us not to just store up treasure, both old and new, more, all we can get to build, in effect, bigger barns. And that's really what Jeff Bezos and Branson are doing by doing all this space stuff. They're just building bigger barns where they can store more stuff, play with more toys, do more things of this sort. But to give them out at the proper time. See, it's not just a matter of taking what I have and disposing of it, but it's a matter of paying attention to what's going on in the lives of people around me and investing what's been given me in them as well. It's not about giving everything away and not having everything, but we are looking at that idea of when is enough enough. And when you have more than enough, what do you do with it? Jesus also tells a parable about a wealthy farmer who just has a great harvest, and he just keeps having great harvest. And so what does he do? He builds bigger barns to store his stuff. Now we look at this and we think, oh, he just has too much. The criticism of the story from Jesus' perspective is not that the man has a lot. It's not that the man has wealth, but it is that while people are hungry and in need, rather than bringing out of his storehouse, of his treasure, of his household, what he could bless others with, he stores it up to keep for himself. So that's what we're asking today. When is enough enough? And what do you have, and what are you doing with it? So again, this is a good time for a pause. A pause for you to view what's yours, what's been invested in you, what your capitals are, what your treasures are, where your equity is. And we've talked about this in 5 different categories. What are my financial blessings, treasures? What are my intellectual treasures? What is it that I know about, that I have insight into, that I've been given a gift for to understand or to explain or to see through? It might be seeing beauty in nature around you, or it might be figuring out technical math problems, or even how to go to space. But we want to ask, what have I got? And we think about financial, intellectual, physical. Physical being the amount of time you have, free time, leisure time, work time, relationship time, whatever that is, the kind of health that you have, what you're dealing with, what you've been blessed with, what you've overcome. Relational capital. Am I good with people? What kind of relationships do I have? Both far and near, both old and new. And spiritual capital. What kind of spiritual insight, authority, gifts, wisdom, understanding do you have that you have been given, that you leverage in your life in order to get the best out of all the other capitals? What is it that you've been given? It's a great time just to pause and think about that. And as I said in the beginning, and I don't want to scoot over it too fast, one of the narratives in our modern culture has been all about it's mine attitude. It's mine. I worked hard for it. I earned it. That may be true. And maybe you've never said it, but maybe you've thought it. When it comes up to sharing something that's yours, maybe you think about, you didn't work for it. You didn't earn it. I did it. It's mine. If you want some, you go work for it. Well, like I say, most of us wouldn't say that out loud, but most of us have thought it about something at some time. And if you have, like me, there's a measure that I'm observing in my own heart about how I've swallowed a modern cultural narrative, a modern value that says, if I work and I accumulate, then it's mine and it's for me to do what I wish with. If that's your value, you've probably actually commingled a cultural value with the good news, with the gospel. I mean, think about it. Do you know how many humans today are slaves? Indentured servants, working hard. We have them coming across our borders all the time, greatly in debt to cartels. People who work hard with little to no actual hope of increasing their treasure. What's your good news for them? If it's work hard and you'll accumulate, get. What's your good news for them? If the good news is not good news for everybody, it's not the good news from Jesus. In Matthew 13, verse 52, it says that the steward, the manager of the household, you and I, brings out of our treasures both old and new. And the word there I think is kind of cool because it's a Greek word that's easy to say, ekbalo. Ek meaning out, and balo is not really ball, but it's to cast. It's similar. It's to throw out, to bring out, to cast out. The word there tells us that the treasure is just not for me to keep, but its value is when I bring it out. And the passage that we looked at in Matthew 24 when it began is that I bring it out at the proper time. The manager that brings out the treasure from the household that's been invested in you is the faithful and wise or sensible manager, servant. You see this idea that, I've worked for it, I've earned it, it's mine. And maybe you have an attitude that, I tithe. Maybe you double tithe. And the rest is mine. I want to suggest to you that that's the attitude of the Pharisees that Jesus had the most controversy with. Because they thought they followed the law, they had given what was required, and the rest was just for them. And they could look past any kind of need around them because they had put a number on what belonged to God and what belonged to them. We find things where in Matthew 23, Jesus rebukes them because he says, you guys are so detailed. And you think your detail, your legalistic view of things is what keeps you in right relationship with God, but you're missing the point. He says, you tithe, and he's talking about the herbs that they have, mint and dill and cumin. He says, you give a tenth of everything, way beyond anything we'd ever expect. And then you walk around observing poor people, hurting people, and you live above it because you have done what you think is right. And Jesus says, guys, you missed the boat. You have missed out on the values of heaven. the weightier things, the greater things like mercy and love and justice and kindness. You see, a lot of us in our Western world have put a number on what we need to do. And if we fulfill that number, then we're good. Well, Peter tried that on Jesus once, really about relational capital. Not quite sure who he's talked about, but he was pretty torqued. He says, Jesus, how many times do I need to forgive my brother? And Peter knows the law. The law is 3 times, dude. 3 times and okay? But Peter says, trying to establish his own righteousness that we see so many people do with Jesus over and over, he says, how many times do I need to forgive my brother? And he doesn't start out with 3. He doubles it, just like the tithe. He doubles the tithe in effect. He doesn't even say 6. He doubles what the law is and adds 1 for good measure. How many times do I need to forgive my brother? 7 times? I mean, this is the opportunity, Peter thinks, for Jesus just to go, dude, if you're doing that, you are the best. And what Jesus says is, why don't we start with 70 times 7? 70 times 7. You see, that blows him out of the water. And Jesus isn't given another story, another new law. Okay, now keep track. I've done it 490 times, 491. You out of here, brother. Okay, that's not it. He's saying it's not about the rules. It's about the stewardship of what's been given to you. And haven't you been fully and freely forgiven over and over and over? Then how about you invest in others the same way you've been invested in? Matthew 24, this idea of the faithful and wise servant, asks the question of who's qualified to become that manager of the master's household. And the point here is that the faithful and sensible servant isn't the one who acquires and keeps and piles and stacks up, but the one who brings that treasure out, who gives it out at the proper time. Now that's not a random thing. It's about paying attention to life. The other night we were at a Mexican restaurant eating outside, had a wonderful waiter. And he and his nephew were both waiters there. Got into a conversation with him, and he took the bracelet off his wrist, Eye of the Tiger and all kinds of groovy stuff like that. And he said, do you like that? Let me give it to you. See, he could have given it to anybody, and they may not have appreciated it. But I appreciated it. You see, in a way, he noticed he paid attention to a Kairos moment. There was something happening there. We had a connection. And that connection had to do with something that he had. And he said, let me bless you with that. And that's what we're supposed to do as followers of Jesus, is to be fully aware of the treasure that we have. Treasure both old and treasure new. And to pay attention in life. To say, this is a moment of opportunity where I can invest something that's been invested in me in you and advance your life. Instead of just building up my kingdom. And again, there's nothing wrong with having wealth. But when you have enough, and we can have a conversation about what's enough, but when you have enough, what do you do with more than enough? We have a string of celebrities lined up to go into space for $250,000 a crack. Well, maybe for them it's not a lot of money, but it seems like they have more than enough. And if they do, are they doing it just for their own personal joyride? Or are they doing with their overflow, things that would be a blessing to other people, that would make everybody's life better. I think that's where I'm going to pause today, and I'm not all down on the space travel. Heck, look at me. I'm in Oregon on the Deschutes River, and I'm loving it, but I'm telling you, I'm feeling blessed, and I am blessed because I get to share this with you. Now, you can think about this in big ways or small ways, but think about when you take a photograph. The other day, I took a photo of otters, and they're really cute, but I could just put that out on the internet, or I could send it to everybody, and I'm not saying that's necessary. Ooh, there's a snake. I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but what I am saying is that I pay attention because I have a sense, a kairos, that for certain people, that would be a blessing. So to certain people, they got a picture of 3 little otters playing in the water with each other. And it was cute. It was cool. What have you got that's been given to you, no matter how you acquired it? What do you have, both old and new? And how are you giving it out? Are you being a faithful and sensible steward of what's been given to you? Are you acquiring, just building bigger barns? Or are you using that to advance God's kingdom in this world? That's why we've been blessed, to bring love, justice, and kindness. And we do that not willy-nilly, but by bringing out of our treasure at the right time, in the right place, with the right people, from what's been given to us. That's what Jesus did for us. He gave us the example. Go thou and do likewise.
Say I have a place on this journey. I see my treasure. You've given me all I need to see my world.